In this parsha, we have the pasuk Vayigdelu Anaorim. The boys Yaakov and Esav grew up. In the Yalkut Shimoini says that all the avos are referred to as Gedolim, and Esav should have also been a Godel. Vayigdelu Anaorim is referring to Esav as well, but he messed up, which seems to be implying that he was growing up spiritually. In fact, in the Zohar, it says specifically that Vayigdelu means a spiritual maturing and spiritual growing up. Avraham Avinu was educating Yaakov and Esav to do mitzvahs. So the Rebbe asks the question, how do we understand, what does this mean that Esav is growing up spiritually? We know that even in their mother's stomach, Esav was already running and gravitating to go out to places of worship of Avodah Zarah. How can we now say that Vayigdelu, as he's growing up spiritually? Now, seemingly, you'd be able to say that just like when a child, before he's born, he's taught the whole Torah, and later he's made to forget the whole Torah so that he should have free choice. In a similar way, we might say over here, yes, Esav in his mother's stomach was gravitating to Avodah Zarah, but then it was forgotten from him, and then Avraham Avinu was educating him, and this had a certain impact on him, and he was now growing up spiritually. But the Rebbe says at the end of the day, it's quite clear that his gravitation to Avodah Zarah in his mother's stomach had a very serious impact on him, and eventually he did leave the path of Hashem because of that. So how do we understand Vayigdelu Anaorim as some sort of spiritual growth? In fact, in the pasuk itself, it says right afterwards, Vayigdelu Anaorim, and how is it expressed by Esav that he's Ish Sod, he goes out into the field and becomes a hunter? The Rebbe now turns to another Maimer Azal. On the pasuk Vayisroitetzu Abonim B'kirba, that the babies were fighting inside of her, Chazal say that they were quarreling over the inheritance of the two worlds, Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. The Rebbe asks, seemingly, if Yaakov is interested in Olam Haba, Esav is interested in Olam Hazeh, what's there to fight about? Each one can have what they want. So we must say that somehow Yaakov wanted Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. Esav also wants both, but the question is, why would Esav HaRasha want Olam Haba? In order to understand all of this, the Rebbe starts off with a much more general question. How is it even possible that Yitzchak should have a child that by nature, before he's born, he's already gravitating to Avodah Zarah? We know that the Avos are called a Merkavo, absolute bittul to Hashem. And their children are born in the utmost level of holiness. So how is it possible that he should have a child that's gravitating to Avodah Zarah? The fact that Esav at a mature age chooses to be a Rasha, so we know every person has free choice. But to say that he's gravitating towards this even in his mother's stomach, how is this possible? Says the Rebbe, we know that there's something called Maisa Avos Simul Labanim. Whatever happened to the Avos is a sign for what's going to happen to the children, and actually gives the children, the Yidden, the koyach to be able to do their Avodah. Which tells us that every Avodah the Yidden are going to be involved in, there has to be something similar to this in the Avodah of the Avos, which enables us to do this Avodah. Now, generally in Avodas Hashem, the Rambam tells us there's two types of Jews. There is what's called a Chassid Amula, the perfectly pious person that never has any temptations to do bad, to do wrong, only wants to do good. And there's another person called Kovish Es Yitzvah, the one who needs to fight his Yetzer Hara. He conquer his Yetzer Hara, overcome his Yetzer Hara, his temptations. Now, the question becomes, if the Avos have to give us the koyach to do all of our avodah, where do we find in the avodah of the Avos this concept of kovish as yitzri, being able to fight our Yetzer Hara? The Avos clearly didn't have these sorts of temptations. Furthermore, to conquer Yetzer Hara, at least you're speaking about a person that's not actually doing bad, he's holding back his temptations. But there's a step lower than that. There's a person that did Aveiros and he needs to do tshuva. Where is the Maisa Avos, in the actions of our Avos, where do we have the koyach, the ability, where are they doing something similar to give us the ability to do tshuva? Says the Rebbe, perhaps we would be able to say that even though the Avos didn't have challenges from inside, from their own evil inclinations, their own Yetzer Haras, but there were challenges from the outside that they had to fight the world around them. And that's giving us the koyach to be able to overcome our challenges. But the Rebbe is not completely satisfied with this, because in some way, says the Rebbe, fighting our own internal struggles with our own Yetzer Hara is sometimes harder than fighting the outside world. So again, where do we have that koyach from the Avos? So one of the explanations, says the Rebbe, is the advantage of the person conquering his Yetzer Hara is that his power to overcome his Yetzer Hara really expresses his tremendous connection to Hashem. That absolutely nothing is going to get in my way to do Hashem's will. Now with the Baal Tshuva, it goes a step further than that even. That even though he messed up already, nevertheless, his connection to Hashem is so strong that it gets him to regret what he had done wrong and to do tshuva, to return to Hashem. Says the Rebbe, it is this strength that we take from the Avos. Their bond to Hashem was so powerful, so strong, that it can never be interrupted even for 1 second. And therefore, even though practically their might, their strength of the Avos expressed itself only with challenges that came from the outside, but if we look at the basis, the cause for this might, for this strength, which is their tremendous connection to Hashem, that gives the ability, the Nesinas Koyach, that's the Maisa of a Simul Bonim, also for the children and for the Yidden after them, to be able to overcome, even if it's a challenge coming from inside. Says the Rebbe, since in the Avodah of the Avos there are these two types of Avodah, in other words, just doing the perfect right thing to start with, and also the strength to be able to overcome any challenges. So this is also expressed or reflected in their children. These two types of avodah, the chassid amula, the perfectly pious person, and the one who needs to overcome is Yetzer Hara. So we have Yitzchak's children, we have Yaakov, who's Ishtam, Yoshev, Yehalom, the one who's sincere and wholesome, sitting and learning Torah all day. And then we have Esav, who's the Ish Tzayid, the hunter. His avodah is Kovish Yitzchak, to fight his Yetzer Hara. And this already did start in their mother's stomach. The only thing is, says the Rebbe, by the avos themselves, so obviously it was all just in the positive, only in a pure way. There was no room for negativity at all. But when it comes down into the children, Yaakov and Esav, so by Esav there is already somewhat of an actual leaning towards bad, but again, it's only so that he should be able to overcome his Yetzer Hara. It's only that since he's a Baal Bchira, since practically he does have free choice, he end up messing up, and he now brought out the evil, the bad, from the potential into the practical. Says the Rebbe, now we can understand also why they're fighting over the two Oilamos. Since we're speaking about Esav, the way he's still in his mother's stomach, still within the realm of Kedusha, still only all for positive things. So when he wants the Oilam Hazeh, it's also for a positive reason. It's only for the Kedusha reason. That is, by someone like Yaakov, the Chassid Amula, the pious one, he feels the main thing is Olam Haba. In other words, for a pious person, he only wants to always go up higher and higher and higher in Kedusha. The ultimate of that is Gan Eden, Olam Haba. The Kovishes Yitzre, the one who conquers the Yetzer Hara, he's the one that feels the Maila, the advantage of Olam Hazeh. He feels the advantage in a place where there's challenges, difficulties, and he overcomes them. And this is why they're quarreling over the two worlds. Because obviously even the pious one needs to do his work in this world. And obviously even the one who fights his Yetzer Hara needs to go higher and higher in matters of Kedusha, which would express itself learning Torah. That's sort of like the Olam Haba within this world. But the difference would be is that by the pious one, by the Yaakov, his avodah in this world is only in order to be able to get to Olam Haba. Whereas by the Kovishes Yitzre, which was supposed to be Esav's avodah, his avodah is mainly with this world. It's only that obviously, even within this world, he also needs to do avodah of limud HaTorah, going up in Kedusha, so that he could deal with this world in the proper way. Says the Rebbe, now we can understand what it means, vayigdelu, that both boys grew up spiritually, even Esav, even though he goes out now and he's a man of the field and a hunter. Because again, the way it was coming from the way it was supposed to be, and from Avraham and Yitzchak's perspective at the time, what does the idea of being a person of the field mean? Dealing with the world, elevating the world. And in order to do that, it needs to be ish tzayid, literally meaning a hunter, but as Rashi says, Yodei tzayid also means someone that could be a cunning person, a person that could be deceptive in a certain way, which Chassidus explains means where the neshama, the yid, has to, so to speak, get dressed in other garments. He's almost like putting on a costume. The neshama getting dressed, pretending to have something to do with the physical world. That's what the idea of Esav was supposed to be, to get involved with the world, looking as if he's dealing with the world. But that's as long as Avram's education was still going on. But practically after his Ashpah finished, then Esav actually messes up, and he ends up being a Ish Tzayid and a Ish Sadeh, a hunter or a cunning and deceiving person, and a person in the field in a negative way. Says the Rebbe, this is also the reason why Yitzchak wants to bless Esav. Since Yitzchak sees in Esav his spiritual source, his spiritual power to deal and elevate the Gashmias, that's why he wants to give the bracha to Esav. But we know that practically the brachas had to come through Yaakov. Because the bottom line is that Yaakov is the one that really sat and learned Torah, Yoshev Yehalom. Therefore, he has the ability to then also go out there and elevate the world as well. And the Rebbe concludes with the Hira. Of course, we have to have both avodas, learning Torah. Yoshev Holim, as well as going out there and elevating and transforming the world. And it specifically has to be first in the way of first Yaakov Ishtam, first sitting and learning Torah in a sincere way, in a proper way. And then if you do that avodah properly, that even when you go out there and get involved in the world, and even when you're getting involved with people that seem to be very far from Torah, and you might have to speak to them in their language, in ways that they can understand and relate to it. Nevertheless, because you started off in the Yaakov way, in the Torah way, then the Torah protects you, that it should be in a proper way. You should be able to elevate the world and the people around you in the proper way. And we're zoichet to the time of the Geula, when as it says, we're all going to say, Ti Yitzchak, Ki Ata Avinu, that you are our Father.